Well, photography to me is everything I see. Essentially, I'm always on the lookout for photographs, and my life wouldn't be the same if I didn't have photography in it. I think just whenever I'm looking, I'm always looking out for potential subjects. I'm always basically got an eye out, and I think that's just come because I've been so ingrained in photography for such a long time. It's sort of how I see the world now. I see it in pictures or potential pictures. That's really exciting, and I think I see things differently than people who aren't photographers, and I think that's quite exciting.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.
Okay, so let me describe it. Like in terms of the content of the image,
Yeah.
it looks like either the inside of a room where the paint is peeled off over years, or a fence where you have these like vertical brown wood. So there's no the perspective per se. There's no real perspective. Everything's it's a sharp image. It's in color. When I look at it, I think it kind of looks like a map of the world. That's kind of where my
Okay.
brain
So
goes.
I see. I assume the one you're talking about has got green and blue in it, and there's like a brown from a door,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, that is essentially what I do. This is a photograph, a very high resolution photograph of a door in Taiyo in Hong
Oh
Kong.
wow. Okay.
Um, so they're almost meant to look like an abstract
Mm-hmm.
painting, but obviously they're not abstract. They're of a subject, but that subject is only known to me. And for a long time, I thought that I would go down that abstract route where the viewer doesn't know what it is, so it becomes a complete abstract.
Mm-hmm.
But I've discovered that people are interested in how I took the photograph, where it is, what it is. So now I've sort of revealed what the photograph actually is,
Mm-hmm.
because then people can relate to it a bit more.
Sure.
But I really wanted it to be like this abstract image, but it is really fun telling the stories because each photograph has got a story, and that's what I have come to appreciate, that people want to know that story behind it.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we're here.
Yeah,
So, okay, so I know so it's a door in Tai O, and I know that Tai O is in Hong Kong. That
yeah.
immediately raises the question of what's your connection to Hong Kong?
I grew up in Hong Kong. My mum is Chinese, and my sister still lives there, and all my mother's side still live in Hong Kong.
Okay.
Uh, so I go back there, every 2 or 3 years, minus a pandemic. So yeah, I absolutely love Hong Kong, and this is I've always photographed Hong Kong. I've filmed in Hong Kong, and this is a new-ish project to me, that I go into the depths of Hong Kong itself, and try and photograph, the details of Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
the little quirks,
Mm-hmm.
rather than what I used to do as a slightly wider shots, taking photos of the Star Ferry, and I love doing all that storytelling. But you can still do storytelling just within an abstract image,
Yeah.
and that's something I've got more and more interested in.
I love that. I started this podcast, and I get to meet people such as yourself, and I just want to go back into this image because again, so now I know for a listener, they have the frame of reference. Oh, a door with
Yeah,
some wooden slats, and it's like, okay, hold on. So the wood
yeah,
is probably a good 60 or 70 years old,
yeah.
and it's been painted over, as you can see. About half of the paint on this wood has withered away. The wood itself looks quite textured and old, and it's this nice rich brown. And you can just see a gap between the vertical slats of the door, where there's one little, the composition is perfect. It's really beautiful, and you could see the layers of paint on it. And if you look at it with your crystal sharp, clear, sharp vision, it's so sharp, and it's so, I mean, you could, on a good monitor, it's like you could see all these incredible colors, and it's really beautiful. And like I said, it's like, it almost looks like, to me, it almost looks like a map of continents
Yeah,
where you have.
I like that. That's really interesting. How different people interpret the image,
Uh-huh.
um, and what people see in the image. I think that's really interesting.
I
And
see a massive vagina as well, but that's a different story.
yeah, yeah. Well, I've got another one that does look like a vagina, but
Okay,
I
okay.
thought it was. So yeah, I haven't put that into my portfolio. I only realised it after I took it.
Okay. No, but listen, so like, just as a visual experience, right? So I imagine that, like, so have you ever printed this photo?
Yeah, so that's what they're for. Really, they're not for the screen. They're to be printed. And I've got one literally next to me here, which is 1.5 meters in size. So I take the photographs in a specific way, so that there's lots of sort of photographic techniques that we could come onto if your listeners are interested. But in order to make it so sharp, right from the middle of the image to the right and to the corners, so that it can be blown up absolutely massive and have it on a wall,
Uh-huh.
like a really big centerpiece in someone's room. That's what they're for. That's what I've all of the sort of photographic techniques goes into making this huge print with
Hmm.
exquisite detail. Yeah,
It's totally exquisite. And I mean, I can totally see this. So, for example, in an office building or whatever, where you normally have some artworks, or in a gallery or everything, you can imagine these large prints, or canvases, sure. And then the fact that it's photographic and it's so sharp, and your subject, and as you say, like, you obviously have the technical ability to really get this really incredible image. So when you made this photograph, clearly your camera's on a tripod,
yeah.
and you're probably, from my I would say, your lens is something like a 50 millimeter, and you're shooting from about 2 or 3 meters away.
I like it. Very very impressive. Yeah. It's actually a bit more than that. So it's about 70 or 80 millimeters, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And essentially, what you don't want is to have any sort of distortion in the image. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't shoot this on a wide angle lens. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you need to compress that perspective, and also you need to be completely directly level to the surface, because that
Mm-hmm.
again means that all the vertical lines are straight. You've got as much depth of field as possible, so you can get everything sharp in the image.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm it's something called image stacking. It's getting a bit geeky now. I
No,
do.
no. Hey, geek out, geek out.
Oh, right, cool, you're great. Yeah, so I also do something called image stacking, which essentially means that I'm focusing on different parts of the image, and then in Photoshop you blend them all together, so you get the depth of field all around the image completely sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you can sort of do that in one image, but it means that you're going to sort of the end range of your lens.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a lot softer if you do that. So like f22, if you do something on that like that, it's much softer. So I prefer to shoot on like f8, where that's the sharpest part of your lens, and then
Mm-hmm.
focus stack on the parts of the image, and then blend them all together, and then you get a really high definition image on the
Yeah.
best part of your lens, and obviously a huge megapixel camera as well.
So sorry if I'm interrupting. I'm just so excited. The previous guest on the show, on the podcast, he does macro photography, and
Mm,
he's so close to these insects that are tiny. They're the size of a blueberry.
yeah,
That he does the stacking in terms of the focus, because it's so small, he's so close, and so he'll combine like four images to get one insect in focus. So it's,
yes,
yeah.
it's very similar to that. I mean, with macro photography, you almost have to do it, because
Mm-hmm.
your lens cannot have I can't get the amount of depth of field that you need
Mm-hmm.
uh, to do it. And with mine, you essentially could potentially just photograph a wall, and it'll probably be okay. But you start to see all the imperfections when you print
Yeah.
it up so big. So that's
Yeah.
why I have to be really, really pernifty about how I photograph it. I'm there for a good 15 minutes
Right.
photographing essentially a door.
Right. Are you shooting raw or are you shooting?
Shooting raw on a Nikon D850 with, I think it's got 47 megapixels or something.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it has to be all raw. But actually, weirdly, I don't actually do much processing to the image. It's part of what I just feel that I prefer to photograph what I'm looking at rather than trying to process it on a computer. I mean, yeah, of
Right.
course, I need to do some sharpening. I need to do some contrast because usually I'm photographing it again, getting extremely geeky. I'm photographing, so I'm extracting the most amount of information from the file,
Yeah.
which means it usually looks very flat. It's very bright,
Mm-hmm.
very flat, but what I'm doing is I'm extracting as much information from that that image as I possibly can, and then you put that in, obviously into Lightroom, and then you just like tweak it so you get
Yeah.
the most amount of detail and obviously the file size as well, which is needed.
Yeah. Like the podcast is called Shooting It Raw, and it's really about highlighting how people are spending their time, right? But obviously, photography is the doorway or the substructure or whatever we call it. So geek away, man. I love it.
Excellent. Okay, well, I can geek out all day. So
Okay, so wait, I've got a question. I've got a
okay.
real question. How did you get into photography?
Well, I started out photographing with my dad's camera, my dad's film camera in, where was that? In America when I was about 15, 16. And I literally didn't know anything about photography at this stage. He gave me this DSLR and I had some film to go in it, put all the film in. Eventually, after ruining a couple of films, literally didn't know anything. Got
Hmm.
to America, photographed all these things that I thought were good. I was told if you put it on manual, you get professional photographs. So put it on manual, whatever the setting was from the 20 years ago when he used it, and
Yeah.
photographed all these things. Obviously, it's on film, so you can't see what you're doing. And got back to I did it in Boots then, and processed all the images. Came out with I'm not joking, probably 200 or 300 photographs, all completely black.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it turned out I had just left it on manual on 8,000th of a second. So
Perfect.
you can imagine how many subjects are well exposed on 8,000th of a second.
I need to make a little correction, just because when you started talking about it, you did refer to it as a DSLR, and I know this is just
Oh,
a brain
yeah,
fart.
right,
Yeah,
sorry.
but an SLR, not a
Yeah,
DSLR, an
that's
SLR.
right. It's been so long, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, dude, I love it. I love it. Okay, okay, and so, but you also mentioned that you grew up in Hong Kong.
yes.
When were you living in Hong Kong and like how did you sort of mature your photographic skill? Like how did that evolve from a kid who gets like a camera from his dad, takes
Yeah,
all these photographs, publishes, like prints them, goes like, oh Jesus, nothing,
yeah.
um, to where you are? Like how did you study photography? Did
No, so I studied geography in Exeter University, and it sort of stemmed from being at school and taking sort of the first sort of digital images with a compact camera, essentially. And I used to love doing that, and then went on my gap year and decided I would get a better camera. Did that, photographed amazing things all around the world, and that's sort of where it stemmed from, really. It actually started in landscape photography. You know, I did a lot of landscape photography and absolutely loved being outside and watching, you know, the weather roll in and waiting for that perfect moment when everything comes together. You know, you've got the light there, you've got the composition, and it's an amazing way to spend an afternoon. And I got really into that, but there's not really much money in landscape photography, or it's very difficult anyway. And I
mm-hmm.
love doing different types of photography. So you know, I do all sorts of photography. This is not just what I do. I do lots of other different bits as well. But I always find myself coming back to these textures, and I really want to make these textures work, and have them in the images, all over the world, and that's what my passion essentially. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so from the start, I lived in Hong Kong when I was about 3 until about 8, and photography really didn't come into it then. I was just living in Hong Kong because my dad had a job with Coca-Cola, so we sort of moved there, and then we came back to England when I was 8. And yeah, so my photography journey started when I was on literally on that trip to America when my dad gave me that film camera.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it started. I was like, oh, this is quite fun, and obviously enjoyed the process. And then I got the images back and they're all black. I was like, this is rubbish. But I did get 1 or 2 photographs. I got one photograph of a dolphin jumping out of the water. And at
Uh-huh.
the time, this is when I was about 17 and still at school, I thought that was the best photo ever taken by anyone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is absolute genius. I'm amazing at photography. And credit to the teacher that I had at school. I saw it the other day, and it's terrible. It's out of focus. It's blur. The composition is awful. But at the time, I thought it was really good, and he encouraged me to go, oh yeah, well done, John. That's really good. I think do this in the dark room. So I started out with the dark room,
Okay.
just for fun, really. I didn't really know what I was doing, but that sort of caught my interest, and the fact that he said that my photo was good made me want to do it more, even though it was crap,
Uh-huh.
totally crap.
Well, you have to learn somewhere.
Well,
It's good.
exactly, and I think I don't know where I got this confidence from that I thought it was good, but
Youth.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of went from there really, and I've had so much encouragement by all my friends and family, and yeah, it just sort of went from there. And then obviously I've got my business now, and I'm loving being a photographer and doing it my
Okay,
day.
hold on. I have to interrupt. You have your business. You love being a photographer. Is your business? Are you a professional photographer?
Yes, yes.
Well, that says something. Okay, so pimp out your business. Like, is it like, are you doing corporate photography? Are you doing nudes? Are you doing like photos of strawberries? What's your work?
Well, I do so many different types of photography. Essentially, I would class myself as a lifestyle photographer. Probably, I do weddings. I do lots of workshops. I teach people workshops. I'm obviously doing these evolving patina textures. I
Hmm.
sell my travel images on stock websites and sell them for prints as well.
Oh
Uh,
wow. Okay.
so I do lots of different things, and I love doing that. I think
Hmm.
I couldn't just be a wedding photographer, or
Oh,
I
for sure.
couldn't just do corporate video. I do videography as well.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
I've got a travel photography YouTube video, YouTube a channel, and yeah,
Pump it. What's the name of your channel?
so it's sort of an adventure travel photography show that I do with one of my friends who's also a photographer, and it's called Photo Escapes.
Okay.
And that is essentially, think of Top Gear but with photography,
Nice.
and not quite as funny because we're not as funny as the three the three presenters. But that's essentially what I loved. I love cars anyway, and that was sort of what I loved and what I really wanted to do. And I thought, why don't I make this with a photography twist? And
Okay.
so we've done quite a few adventures, around the world. We've been to Sri Lanka, India, Ireland, London, loads of different places, and absolutely love filming those. So
You
that's where
see,
That's where I learned videography essentially in storytelling.
I'm beginning to suspect that you're a smarter version of me because I'm the one who comes up with a podcast about photography. So you like put that in my pipe, I guess.
I'd love to do it.
Okay. Well, look. Let's go on to the next photograph because So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So, if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.